Hey everyone, welcome to Logan's Mosh Pit. Glad to have you here. Do me a favor and please subscribe if you haven't already. I know what you need, some more rock and read. Today we will continue our journey through the book Crazy from the Heat by Van Halen's original vocalist, David Lee Roth. We're on chapter 6. Similar to the previous chapter, this one is even longer than Await at the DMV, so I split chapter 6 into 2 parts. Now, let's get into part 1. There was a blues revival from 1967 to 1969, and nobody really got it. If you go back through the Stones and Eric Clapton, most of these people were art school students. They just served it up direct. You had the Paul Butterfield Blues Band, Mike Bloomfield, James Cotton, but the Doors played blues. If you listen to most of their songs, they're blues format, 1, 4, 5, 12-bar repetition. But nobody really thought of it as that. Jimi Hendrix was unique, to a degree. Lonnie Mack, B.B. or Albert King, and others were all of Jimmy's references and inspirations, where he learned to play. Now go back and listen to that music with that in mind, and you'll hear he's playing classic blues licks. Yes, he got involved in distortion as a means of gainful employment and feedback. Great, but it's just not far off from classic B.B. King, Albert King kinds of riffs. But nobody knew it. There were blues musicians. Blues band was a great thing to have attached to the name. The Steve Miller, the Carlos Santana Blues Band, you know. But most of it was classic blues. That's the way the singers sang it, that's the way guitar players played it, and then, moving on, in 1969, when Led Zeppelin came out, and nobody thinks of them as a blues band, that was hard rock, that was heavy metal. Bull. It was classic, quintessential blues. Most of that stuff, You Shook Me All Night Long, etc., are old Muddy Waters blues songs. They did a different arrangement, but if you listen to Jimmy Page play with that in mind, you hear it's nothing but classic blues riffs. Changed the sound of the amplifier, changed the sound of the guitar, gave it his own emotional tone. I purchased those records, and I salute them. But it's blues. The son of a frog is also a frog. Right at the end of the 11th grade, there were a lot of hormones in the air, and nothing represented this better than the first ZZ Top album. This is classic blues. You listen to it, it's just blues, but it's played with force, and it's absolutely American. Texas. It's beyond American. American was a chip off the Texas Stone. All you ever had to do was see a John Wayne movie, and you knew that. This is the first time Texas became hip. And this is the same blues that we were listening to, in terms of the Stones trying to imitate John Lee Hooker. You know, Little Red Rooster. They're trying to sing like Muddy Waters. And in 71, 72, right in there, ZZ Top opened for the Rolling Stones, and just like the Persuasions before them, got kicked off the tour. Lead bass and drums. The only thing that had been even close to this was the Jeff Beck group. Listen, it sounds like old Jeff Beck, but Jeff was just stealing old black guy stuff. Listen to that ZZ Top bass player. He knows barbecue sauce. This band comes from the land of the hubcap and the clothesline, and they're both in the front yard, and the hubcaps are there for them to play on. Another band that really swarmed was Grand Funk Railroad. It didn't have the substance of the blues, yet it was a blues band. Grand Funk Railroad kind of veered from that, didn't convey so much of a lifestyle. This was a place that you wanted to go visit. You wanted to go to a roadhouse bar where this band was playing. We must have learned 10 songs by Grand Funk. This is where Van Halen cut a lot of its forceful identity. These guys were obviously having a good time, These guys would do the thing, with two guitar players dancing back and forth, which was essentially Paul Revere and the Raiders doing steps all over again, but better. ZZ Top represented exactly what reggae came to represent a few years later when Bob Marley landed upon these shores. That was a kind of music that you could dance to and not spill your beer. You're thinking that through your head right now, aren't you? Your version. But you already know the step. Just hold it out in front of you. There you go. Now groove. You gotta remember, the operative word now is bad. That's what it meant when you went out in your 57 Chevy Bel Air to drink a beer, when you went out to smoke. It stopped being that kind of quasi-political peacenik love-in thing. It became the ritual of Saturday nightism, the kind that required police presence, or at least a higher police presence. Excuse me, I have to groove. Backyard parties. You'd do it just the way you'd spell it. Backyard parties. What traditionally would happen, somebody's parents would take a vacation. It starts that simple. The great journey always begins with a simple step. Living around the Pasadena area, there was everything from lower middle class welfare daddies to upper middle class daddies who belonged to the Allendale Golf Club, houses that have a guest house, and the son lives in the guest house. So it's 10th or 11th, 12th grade, right? Junior now has moved out of the house, lives in the guest house. He lights candles, a little black light maybe, some Almond Brothers. He's always got the reefer, which he rolls on top of an album cover. Later on, I like to tell people that Van Halen album covers were specifically engineered. They'd say, "How do you mean?" I'd say, well, you'll notice if you take it and you just hold it. You put one corner in your mouth, and then you need a partner, you know? Van Halen's partner music. And you hold the 9 o'clock and 3 o'clock corners in your hands. Get your partner to hold the other one. If it's a she, get her to hold the other in her teeth, so you're kind of looking at each other. You put your reefer right in the middle, and just kind of crumple it. Make your thumb go up and down on your middle finger and the other one, and you get it right in the middle, okay? With your right hand, you kind of like, you know how you tink somebody on the back of the head? You take your thumb and hold back your middle finger, and you go tink very, very gently, right underneath the album cover, and you tilt it ever so slightly, and all the seeds will run out. You would visit Junior, who was now living in the guest house by the little kidney-shaped pool. His parents would ultimately go on some kind of a vacation, and you would have a party. Now the low end of the spectrum was a house party. Stereo playing, somebody spinning records. It would usually be a gal at that level. I say gal because to say girl means like too young, and to say woman, well, it's too early to say woman. Really, gal was right in the middle. To be a woman takes distance, so it's purely complimentary, you know, as well as descriptive. So it would be a gal, one who had the wherewithal to put a bowl of chips next to the bowl of dip, whereas a guy wouldn't do either one. A guy would count on another guy to bring the stereo, and that wouldn't happen. There would be a fight, ultimately, which isn't saying that that was a bad party, but the gals tended toward the contrary. Makes the world go round. Fills the proverbial dance floor, if you know what I'm saying, and I think you do. We would dance to Sly and the Family Stone, a little Rolling Stones, a lot of Marvin Gaye. 1970 to 1972, that's high school for me. Marvin Gaye. What's going on was happening. James Brown? Absolutely. We could end the book right here, and I would feel spiritually validated and fulfilled as a man, as a philosopher and a competitor in the rat race. Hot pants. Quote the great James Brown. Use what you got to get what you want. Hot, hot pants. Oh my gosh. Her hot pants started late and ended early. And you had the matching go-go boots. These boots are made for walking. Nancy Sinatra kind of white marching boots. Wow, that just focused everything. We started going to backyard parties that had more of a barbecue element, a gathering of the tribes, a big party. And at these parties, they would hire a band. The premiere party every year was at my pal Stan Swantick's house on Michigan Street, just below Washington, right down from the Washington Theater, starring the Mac. Stan had 3 brothers. His oldest was a few years older than us. So when we were in 10th grade, Stan's brother Joe was in senior year, squeezing the best-looking 10th grader, of course. Sandy, I think, was her name. Oh my gosh! If you look in the dictionary to this day under hot pants, there's a picture of Sandy. Joe would throw the Swantek party once a year, toward the hot months, somewhere around May or June. It was always very well attended. You brought your Budweiser malt liquor a month in advance for this one. You started to ice it down 2 weeks in front. You began to starch your jeans. When I say starch your jeans, it means you get regular jeans and you iron them yourself, and you use the entire can of spray starch, okay? And you gotta let it dry, and then you iron it again, let it dry, and iron it again. This was like a half an afternoon kind of vibe. You would go over to the one who lived in the guest house at his parents' house now, and there would be an ironing board and an iron. We'd smoke and listen to records, and we'd take turns ironing our pants. Or the girlfriends would iron the pants, and the guys would be there. This is cut right out of the side of the river in Senegal or something. The women are beating with rocks, and the guys are sitting around smoking and bragging and telling lies. The girls would iron the pants until they were like a board. You could tell when you were thoroughly starched, when your was right, in that you could hold the pants out from about 4 inches above the knee, and they would stick out straight. You'd have these razor creases, in the front and the back. An option was to make a cuff and starch the cuff into place as well. You used the entire can of spray starch. Can you dig it? It was quite a ritual. You'd be waxing up the car and pulling out the baffles to get it to sound that baritone groan, picking out the tapes. You would rewind your 8-tracks, because with 8-tracks, you couldn't just hit rewind. You had to know the song on the other side of the tape that corresponded with the song that you wanted to hear, fast forward it all the way to the song on the other side, and then flip the tape. So it really paid, especially if you connived a girl into your car, to have the tape ready. Precious moments could be lost while you're searching for the right song. Of course, your command over the tape deck indicated just how much of a man you were. So you would have to rewind the tapes to get them near the top of the song, but not right at the top of the song, because that showed that you had a plan. You did about 30 seconds of the song before, like it was all uncalculated. As you were driving to the party, you had your tapes set. You put them in order and... Because if you move right to Barry White, okay man, your cards are out in the open. You would have to play something like, I don't care, we're all just having a great time. Isn't that right, sugar honey? The Allman Brothers Live at the Fillmore, some Van Morrison, kind of ease into the program. Put on a little Marvin Gaye, still heavily rhythmic, but hey now, what's he singing about? Don't worry, baby, he's black. Can you dig it? And you wind up with Barry White or Roberta Flack. Backyard parties developed into an art form. J.C. Agajanian, the famous auto racing promoter, had a nephew who lived in a house with 5 bedrooms and a big pool, and lots of space. So when his folks would split, 2-3 times a year, there'd be a massive party. Well over 200 people would show up. That was right about the time, going to one of these parties, that I first saw the Van Halens. It's the brother and the brother, the guitar player and the drummer, with the bass player, doing note for note, verbatim renditions of The Who live at Leeds, or Deep Purple's Smoke on the Water, or from Woodstock, when Alvin Lee comes out and plays Going Home faster than any known human being on Earth, or at least up until that time. Edward could do that lick. It was amazing stuff. Playing at those parties got competitive fast. because I got into a band the last year of high school, right in there, 72, and we made the impossibly forward-thinking move of renting a little stage from Abbey Rents. It was about 9 inches tall, with little risers, like they do at union meetings. We'd set up the band on this little stage. Oh, nobody had ever seen anything like this. God. We took some of the money from the proceeds and rented a little PA system, Altec Lansing 1520s, I think, with a horn and a 15-inch speaker in each cabinet. Well, a horn and a 15-inch speaker on either side is what Dr. Dre is sitting on when he takes off down Whittier Boulevard today. But back then, it was impossibly cutting edge. We had upped the ante. I got into a band called the Red Ball Jets, named after a sneaker. We played Johnny B. Good for 25 minutes at a time, some Rolling Stones songs, and our musicianship level, our musicality, between a 1 and a 10, was a solid 5, a solid 6 on a good night. There was no signature sound to it, but we had a hell of a show, because I was already Diamond Dave. I had pants with the pleats and the little sleeveless sweater that just goes right to the top of the pants. You could see a little bit of belly button, maybe some suspenders. That was a little bit aggressive. But can you dig what I'm saying? Shag haircut that I drove down to Balboa Island to get, little Cuban heels, not two-tone shoes in a gangster sense, but a stripe that ran right down the middle, from the laces to the toe, blue and tan. Halfway through singing at a party, I'd take my suspenders down and let them hang around my butt, and that really showed I was working. We were a pretty big hit on the backyard circuit. We entered into immediate competition with the Van Halens, who at the time were called Mammoth, a typical kind of rock band name, nondescript. It would be my idea to call the band Van Halen. They wanted to call the band Rat Salad, named after a Black Sabbath song. I said, no. I felt the name Van Halen was like the name Santana. There was conflict and rumor-mongering between bands. During their set, the Van Halens stood around like the guys in Nirvana. They wore Levi cords with the boxer shorts sticking out and a t-shirt and just sorta stood there. But their music was spectacular. Chain-smoked Camel filters. They had girlfriends. Alex's girlfriend would sit behind him on a little packing case while he played drums. We Red Ball Jets were in belligerent competition with Mammoth. We'd compete for whose parties were the best and the biggest. There were a couple little park gigs in the public park. The Youth Community Center, the recreation center of the Pasadena Youth Organization, would have some bands playing. People would gather on the field at sundown, and some rock bands would play. Just beginning rock bands, you know, high school, junior college, but these gigs were to be fought over venomously. That was the first stage of, I'm gonna be somebody. I was bound and determined to go places. Playing at the Agajanians' party was the first place you had to get to. Youth club dances, they weren't an alternative. They were chaperoned. They were screened and controlled. People were watching you. They would follow you outside to see if you were smoking Marlboros. You weren't allowed to kiss the girls and make them cry. All those gals from Alverno Heights and St. Francis, the Catholic girls' school, the thoroughbreds, I suddenly had Entree to. If I could perform in a band at one of these parties, well, all those girls were in attendance. Suddenly it became what later on was known on CNN as a target-rich environment. Okay now, I'm leaping ahead here, in the party schism, because I didn't actually join the Van Halens until probably late 74, but we began to play the backyard parties as well as dance clubs, top 40 cover band, dance clubs, or whatever. But the first critical step, first base, was to play the backyards. In Van Halen, we were the first to get lights. We'd go and steal floodlights from the lawns of little apartment complexes all over Pasadena. At 1 in the morning, you know, those little red and blue and amber and green floodlights that sit in those little formica cones? Ones that shine on 2 palm trees or against the wall, where it said something like Winston Apartments. You would take an Iron Boy work glove because the lamp would be really hot by 1 in the morning. You could unscrew it manually. You'd carry a paper bag to put it in. We made 3 boxes that would accommodate 5 colors: red, blue, yellow, green, and off. Off being the most important color, because then you knew it was the end of the song. You knew, man, because we'd hit a note, boom! Very cool. Your color green served as white. You'd throw that white on, you know you were into the next little episode, the next little segment. This was run by a foot switch that the bass player Mike Anthony worked. As well as doing backup vocals, he ran the foot switch for the lights. We would stack these 2 banks of each on either side of the stage, on the little PA system, on this little bar stage. Nobody had ever seen anything like this. This was full-scale production value. Talk about bang for your buck. Just to complicate things, same time period, somewhere in 71 if you read magazines, and you were plugged into underground radio, you became aware of a fellow named David Bowie. Bowie was not anything like the David Bowie that you think of today. He was Ziggy, the spider from Mars, the thin white duke. He was every bit that 0% body fat, wasted lifestyle, superhero, bizarre. You would read stuff in Circus or Cream magazines, David and his wife Angela Bowie's makeup hints. Nobody even gave it a second thought. They would describe the rice makeup that he would use to get that kabuki vibe. What he had done was mix kabuki with science fiction. Platform shoes, vacuum-packed spandex, the butch haircut that all of my girlfriends adopted instantly, if not sooner. David looked like he was coming from Neptune. Forget Mars. That old saw of, "I come from a planet far, far away, darling," could well have been tattooed across his anorexic butt. He caused a fury and a slew of questions and outrage. Wow. And the word unisex slammed into our public consciousness. I asked somebody at a club the other night, "Excuse me, where's the men's room?" He says, "It's unisex." I get it. He's being kitsch and shtick by referencing an old 70s word, because that's hip, just like early 70s pants, bell-bottoms, and early 70s haircuts. So now they say it's a unisex bathroom. I get it. Early 70s. How very pop. The idea of unisex pants came into vogue because women started wearing pants for the first time to the workplace, to a party, to the beach in 1971 and 1972. Until then, no, no, no. You might run into Marilyn Monroe being a tough guy in a pair of dungarees or chinos outside of a pickup truck in the Misfits, but it was not acceptable standard fare. You'd catch one of my butch girlfriends wearing pants, absolutely, but not Pat Nixon. Probably the most popular cartoon variation that you would ever see would take a little Martian talking to a garbage can, saying, "Take me to your leader." This is how we felt talking to our parents, our teachers, our probation officers. The way David looked is the way we felt. It was at precisely this time period that I was allowed to go to concerts. My first concert was late high school, humble pie at the Long Beach Arena. Up until then, I had to sneak off to concerts, because just like when West Side Story came out, I was forbidden to go see it. When Easy Rider came out, I was not allowed to go see it. I remember hitchhiking in the pouring rain in 1969 to go see a double bill of Woodstock and Easy Rider. I saw both twice in a row, because I knew I probably wasn't going back again in real short order. Right at the end of high school, my parents gave in, and this is based on arguments at the family dinner table that revolved around things like, "When I'm able to, I'm gonna grow sideburns." No, you're not. Until then, I had to crawl out the window, literally. Join up with some pals to go see Alice Cooper open for Led Zeppelin at the Rose Palace, to go see Janis Joplin and Iron Butterfly at the Pasadena Civic. That was in 8th grade. I knew that I was going to be missing a point in history, and I never got caught. Master of deception, master of disguise, David Roth, at your service. That's when I really signed off family existence. I discerned early that really didn't exist geographically. It's all inside your head, or your shorts. I just discerned, correctly or incorrectly, that if I was going to really maximize who or what I was as an artist, that I really had to live it and breathe it. Well, it's that old climbing philosophy. If you cut the rope from below your feet, you're more apt to submit than retreat. I graduated John Muir High School in 1972. They played Samba Pati by Santana on a loop over and over again as we walked up to get our diplomas at the Rose Bowl. The Whispers played at our school prom, one of the black step bands, 5 guys who have been around forever. I started heading out to Hollywood that year to go to dance clubs, the most important being Gazzari's on the Strip. There was a band there called 13th Hour, and they did Rare Earth's Get Ready. I would say, man, this is even better than backyard parties. I want to get in on this. This is great. This is where all the heat's coming from. This is where all the light's coming from. And Bill Gazzari had all these dancing girls, the Gazzari dancers, go-go girls. I determined that, hey, this was the next step, my entree to Hollywood. Never even stopping to think that I might have a potential to get into the Rainbow Bar and Grill, which was a full block down the street. That was just like, whoa, Led Zeppelin hung out there, the Rolling Stones hung out there. A couple years later, when Van Halen kicked in, first place we headed for was Gazzari's on the Strip. We auditioned once, didn't make it. Auditioned the second time, made it. Played Smoke on the Water by Deep Purple, Hanging Around and Free Ride by the Edgar Winter Band. You know, the song goes, driving around with my stereo on, feeling good. But even then, I was being left of center, driving around with no underwear on. But Bill Gazzari, the old codger, dug my sense of humor. For the first 2 years we worked there, he called me Van. It's a good thing I didn't come from a band named Pink Floyd. He would come up to me and he'd say, "Hey Van, boys did good pull this week. Here's the $125 I owe you for the last 4 nights, and here's $25 for you." I dutifully would go and split up that $25 with the other guys in the band, leaving Bill, of course, to think I was completely on the take. We bonded heavily. Bill was a video pioneer. These huge cameras mounted on tripods with these huge tape decks the size of a suitcase. Can you dig it? He would stop me as everybody was filing out to pack our equipment into our cars, and he'd stop me. Hey Van, want to see some of my films?" I'd say, "Sure." Bill would make a big production after everybody else had gone, and they'd feature some of the girls, the dancers, the groupies, the bartendresses, whatever. He'd get a little piece of wood in the little windowette in the back door, and I knew that we were going to commence education. He was going to school me. He'd say, "All right, I want to teach you a lesson about the music business. First off, give me your watch. Give me your watch. Come here. Put it here." I'd take my watch off, and he'd put it in his pocket, and he'd say, "You just learned a lesson." Right after I graduated high school, I attended Pasadena City College. Took theory and orchestration, music theory, these kinds of things. Talk about a fish out of water. Mathematics completely befuddled me. I can spell the word 8 in 9 languages and recognize it in 12, but I can't add it with anything. I was in classes with the Van Halens. It was at this precise moment when all young new musicians are making that decision. Are you going to go commercial? Are you going to be a sellout? Are you going to be a cloying, result-oriented infidel making money? Or are you going to pursue the classic left bank, I come from nowhere, I go home to no one kind of approach? The Van Halens, as Mammoth, had been playing backyard parties for a number of years, were very adept at what they played, but they couldn't get any jobs at dance clubs. Now my band, Red Ball Jets, had broken up, and I had a little PA system that again I signed a contract with my father for, and worked to pay it off. A little club-sized PA system. The Van Halens would come over to the house to rent my PA system when they'd play these parties. But they weren't getting the shows in the bars. They couldn't understand why. I explained to them, one day, it's because you play all 20 minutes of I'm So Glad by Cream, complete with drum solo, live, note for note, and it's very impressive, but you can't dance to it. That's not, excuse me, do you come here often music? The club owners described it as too psychedelic. The band couldn't get arrested. I said, now I can dance, and since you're always running my PA system and coming back frustrated, I'm in a position to assist. I said, I will personally check every song for danceability, and we'll play rock tunes, but ones that you can dance to, like Walk This Way by Aerosmith, ZZ Top's Waiting for the Bus, or one of those songs Just Got Paid. That's a very danceable song. It's rock. You can dance to it. They consented begrudgingly. Lo and behold, we started getting club gigs. We started working 45-minute sets a night, running the dance contest, and so forth. What's more, they didn't have to pay me rent for the PA system anymore. It's what in business is called an inducement. At the same time, we were in junior college, Pasadena CC, theory and orchestration, music theory, harmonic structure, etc. I learned a tremendous amount, but was flunking out duly. Ed Van Halen and I took vocalization class, learning how to sing, learning how to use vibrato. For our final exam, it was a one-semester course. You had to do a song, and Edward played acoustic guitar and did the Blind Faith tune, Can't Find My Way Home. He played the guitar exactly like it was on the record. It was very impressive. I sang, Go Away, Little Girl, the Donny Osmond version. Alex Van Halen was knocking out 18-piece rock jazz ensemble arrangements for West Side Story that nobody could play in 11/14 time, 11 beats per bar, and had to go from instrument to instrument, showing these befuddled students how to get to the first coda. One of our teachers' claims to fame at the time was that he was a professor of music, and Frank Zappa had studied under his tutelage. Now he brags that he trained the great Van Halen. From him, I learned a singular phrase that I use to this day. If it sounds good, it is good. 2 rules to music. Number 1, if it sounds good, it is good. Number 2, there ain't no other rule. Well, I quit, auspiciously, but I did learn a handful of cool harmonic structures, a couple of hybrid chord structures, the basic theory of melody, just little elements, bits and pieces, played saxophone, also took piano lessons, got exactly nowhere, but still gleaned little elements here and there. More than anything, it taught me to make a commitment to what you were doing in music, because it was my first experience with detractors. My own colleagues were my detractors. You guys play ZZ Top and Casey and the Sunshine Band, and you get paid for it. You're a sellout. I had conviction behind that. It forced me to stand my ground, to reconnoiter my own position in the face of harsh, critical assessment from my peer group. We played the bars religiously, as often as they would let us. We learned hundreds of other people's songs. James Brown, Ohio Players, Led Zeppelin, ZZ Top. Didn't matter. We learned them. We played in places so small that Alex would have to tape his wallet to the skin of his snare drum with gaffer tape because the owners would complain his snare drum was too loud. We would have to hang blankets in front of a single amplifier case because the guitar was too loud. This is where my pitch was first developed. Hey, don't forget, ladies in free before 9, 2 for 1 dance contest Wednesday, division finals twice a year, happy hour from 5 till February, and on and on. You had to keep up the rap, and I would personally check every song for danceability by dancing to it. A totally hip car that would run effortlessly was $1,100. A pair of amazing platform shoes with boot tops that went up to your knee from Fred Slatton's, cost $65. Top of the line. A pair of pants, brand new designer jeans were about 30 bucks, 40 with tax. I bought a little Opel Kadett station wagon for $1,100. You could fit one PA speaker in the back compartment and one PA speaker on the top. All the gears, the brains of it, you know, the controls in the passenger side. I remember one day the passenger side window became unglued from the ratchet inside the door, and the glass fell inside. So I pulled the glass up with a pair of pliers and plugged a couple of number 2 pencils into it to keep the window up. Ultimately, of course, the pencils popped out, going over the speed bumps where the Pasadena freeway turns into the North Hollywood freeway. The glass fell inside and smashed into a trillion little pieces inside the door. It sounded like a giant maraca. So on my next visit to the Salvation Army, I bought a big wool blanket, kept it in the back seat in case I went on a date. Girlfriend at the time would complain, "When are you going to do something about this?" Her little haircut getting blown to pieces out on the freeway. I said, "Honey, something's being done." She says, "What's that?" I said, "Summer's on its way." Bumpered somebody coming home from the beach that summer. Wasn't looking, rolled 4 feet into the car in front of me, launched the front bumper, dented the hood cover so hard they couldn't get the hood open. So for the next 2 years, I carried a shovel in the back of the car in case I needed to open the hood. You'd have to get out there with the shovel and get some leverage. I would come home from club gigs, and getting the PA speaker out of the back of the car was easy. Getting it off of the top of the car, read 6'2", and I'm only 6 feet in my stocking feet. So I'd pull it off the edge and start to fulcrum it. It would start to get off balance, and I'd get the base of it onto my chest and start to lower it to my legs. I'd get the speaker coming off the top of the car and onto my chest, get it positioned, and then start lowering it, using my legs, bending my knees. You didn't want to roll it onto your side and break something. That meant money spent. I would routinely spend a half an hour in that bullfrog position with a 300-pound speaker sitting on my chest, trying to figure out, okay, where do I go from here? Today, I have the front of that car. A friend of mine, Ted Rosenthal, is an artist. I had had the car sitting in the backyard ever since 1969, all the way up into the late 80s. Ted worked a lot with an acetylene torch. I had him cut off the whole front engine compartment with the front tires and the grill, plus the whole front windshield. And in the hallway, in my house in Pasadena, at about 5.5 feet up the wall, we bolted the whole front engine compartment. Sticks out of the wall by 6.5 feet, with the tires and the grill and the front window. And then we went to Ellis Mercantile, who supplies props and such for the movies, and bought a stuffed deer in full bounding gait. Sawed it in half, right past the withers, smashed out the driver's side part of the windshield, and stuck in just the ass and the back legs, like we drove the car and hit it, and then somehow careened through the wall. The title of it is My First Deer. Well, that wraps up part 1. Stay tuned for the second half. Let me know what you thought of part 1 in the comments below. As for today's video, guys, I hope you enjoyed. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. I really appreciate the support. I'll see you next time. Till then, rock on.